My name is Abby Chavez, and I am the chair for the Latino Leadership Network, also known as LLN. I am really excited that you guys are joining us today. We have an amazing presentation that is going to be taking place. So I really hope that you guys enjoy it. A few housekeeping rules. Today's meeting is being recorded, so please ensure that your microphone is on mute. And if you have any questions or have any technical issues, please throw them into the chat during the meeting, and myself or one of my amazing board members will keep an eye out and be able to assist you as best that we can. So for today's agenda, we have got Lolo Arevalo, who is going to be providing some resume and interview tips for that next promotion, next job opportunity that you may be interested in. So we are looking forward to that. We will also be breaking out for networking. Sorry, my screen does it on its own. And we've got some facilitators that will just be asking some open-ended questions for you guys, just to provide that opportunity for you to connect with other Latinos that are in state government. Followed after the networking, we will do subcommittee report out so that you are aware of what the wonderful subcommittees that we have are doing over the next month or so. And then next meeting announcements. So to get us kicked off right now, I want to, like I've said, I've introduced myself. I'm the chair for LLN, but I also want to introduce my co-chair, Tony Griego, and kind of give you a little bit about what we envision for LLN here in this next year. So Tony.
Thank you, Abby. Hi, everybody. I'm Tony Griego. You might have seen my face as part of our meetings before. I've been around LLN for a bit now, and I appreciate the opportunity to step up and help in a more strategic leadership role. And some of the things I'm excited for are like having Lolo today to talk about, how you can how we can help advance your careers. Right now, there's a lot of opportunity and hirings going on at state agencies. And so we'd like to help all of you capitalize on all of that and really bring events that help build up professional development and networking, as well as really create more opportunities for Latinos to connect throughout state government, and then build on some of the work that we're seeing in some of our subcommittees, like the DEI subcommittee or the best practices subcommittee, and then also some of the activities that Indira has been organizing with our health and wellness committee, such as our wellness challenges on Map My Run that we are getting up and running. Larry, I'm coming for you with the hikes for this month. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you. Yeah, so as for me, I have been the interim chair for a while, and then just got elected to be the chair for this next year. And I have been a part of LLN for almost 3 years now. I served as the treasurer and acting secretary. So I have been heavily involved with the BRG, and am just looking forward to the future. I feel like we've made some amazing improvements and have provided some wonderful webinars that have really gained the interest of our members, and even those that haven't been members for a very long time. For me, what I really want to focus on when it comes to LLN is increasing the Latino representation in our state government and its leadership. And in order to do that, we have got to you know, we've got to come together. We've got to make sure that our voices are heard and provide you with the trainings and professional development and the connections for you to get there. And so I know that that is very, a very big vision that I have, for this next year. But I truly think that we can make it happen. I mean, we are resilient. We are a powerful community, and si se puede, we can do it. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Lolo so that he can give his presentation.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad I made it. I was realizing I didn't have the link, so I was scrambling there for a minute. I was going, okay, is everybody waiting?
I wondered about that. I was checking my emails. I'm like, I know that I forwarded it to him. So my apologies.
No problem. I went on LinkedIn. Thank goodness I remembered Steve had put it on his posting. And so there you go. I had it.
Perfect. So I have your PowerPoint. You let me know when you are ready to advance to the next slide and we'll get it going.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Well, I gotta just tell you, I'm kind of excited to be back in the space of the Latino Leadership Network. As you guys know, I have a little bit of history with the group. So, I'm pretty proud to say that I was a part of submitting the charter and getting that approved by OFM. And so it's something that I smile about and, and feel really good about the experiences we had together. So just to do this presentation for the membership makes me really happy. So just want to say that up front. I'm going to go ahead and take my camera off just so that I can focus on my notes. Is that okay? Or do people need to see my face? Okay.
No, you're good.
Okay. So landing the job that you're passionate about, I know that's probably something that everybody wants to gravitate toward. I know personally I did. Because when you think about working, you can kind of remember the whole saying that if you do something you love to do, then it's not work, right? I mean, at least it's easier to deal with, and you don't mind sometimes having to work later hours or something because it's something you actually genuinely love to do. Well, I think a lot of us sometimes go to a job to gain some experience, but ultimately it's on a path to something that we want more. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. And so sometimes we're in transition and sometimes we just need to figure out how to get to the better place. So I wanted to be really clear that in today's presentation, this is going to be geared towards state government jobs. And the reason I say that is because in the private sector, you're talking about a whole different can of worms. There's things that are a little more complex. I would even venture to say there's a little more bias in the process, and you don't necessarily know what you're dealing with. And so there might even be politics involved. So state government to some degree is a lot better. There's certain consistencies that we rely on. And I think that we're all attempting to do a better job of eliminating bias and doing a far more equitable hiring system. And I saw Larry, so hopefully he's agreeing with me on that too. So let me just say that state government for me has always been kind of like a job where I see a purpose because we're benefiting the citizens of Washington State. And I believe there's a certain honor in doing that type of work. Otherwise, probably all of us could make at least 30% more income in the private sector. Wouldn't you agree? I know my wife just got a job offer from Children's Hospital and she's a senior recruiter, but she's going to make more money than me. And here I am, a state manager. And so I thought, man, what's going on? Where's the fairness in that? But it's all good because it goes to the same budget. So I'm all right with it. I'm good. Um, but I just know that it's not equitable in terms of salary. So there's got to be more, right? I mean, we do this for other reasons. It's not just the money. And so there's lots of reasons to do state government. So go ahead and switch to the slide. So just a little bit about me. I grew up in the valley, which is called the Yakima Valley. I'm sure Abby would appreciate this because she's got her own little valley area over there in Royal City. But if you talk to a person like Abby or me, you'd quickly understand that opportunities for jobs don't come frequent. In fact, they're very rare. The opportunities for upward mobility is tough. And I would say that even applies to the educational system, just everything, especially as Latinos, and that's a whole extra layer of things that we could talk about. But so I grew up in a small rural town called Grandview. At the time, it was about 5,000 people, and it's a very farming rural area. And so my jobs growing up were working in the farms. It was working in fruit warehouses and working at McDonald's when it finally came open nearby. Everybody wanted to work at McDonald's because that was a big deal. Okay, so I worked at McDonald's at the age of 16. So what you come to find out, and maybe Abby can relate, is that people will start to see something in you and they will start pushing you up. Like they may say, that Abby girl, she's got something going on, right? She needs to be supported. We need to help her get to a better place. And so people will start advocating and pushing for you to succeed. And so for me, as a state recruiter, it's always been going back to that kind of space, where you feel that someone gave you kind of like a lift, hands up and said, hey, I'd like to help you. I can see that you really want to do something with your life. And I'm going to try to open some doors for you. So that's been my experience growing up, as a second generation Mexican. Parents grew up as farm workers. Dad, first person to graduate from high school. I'm first person to graduate from college. When asked my parents, like, well, hey, I know you want me to go to college, but can you give me some help? And they say, we have no idea. You just got to go do it and figure it out. And so that's the environment, right? So that's why this particular topic is so important to me. So you can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, state government and jobs in state are very different. And so there's a lot of things that you might want to consider doing if you're still employed. So for me, and I'm applying this to a time when I worked for DES, and I know I see Steve down there, and DES was a great place for me, but at the time when I came in, I already knew I was overqualified. I mean, my manager told me that right from the get-go. Hey, Lolo, I know you're overqualified. I don't expect you to be here longer than 6 months. I said, oh, really? Okay. But, as funny as she was being and facetious, I knew that it was true, that it was my foot in the door. It was to help add value to the environment and the place, but also to start thinking about what else I would do next. And so I'm guessing that some people in the audience are probably in this place that maybe they got their foot in the door and now they're looking to grow in something else. Because really, the way I see jobs, I think we should really be doing something like if I was looking at a job that I wanted to apply to, I would consider that I should know at least maybe 75% of it. Because if I knew 100%, wouldn't I be bored? Right? I mean, I'd be bored because I hear people saying, oh, well, I need to apply to his job, but I'm not qualified. And so what percentage are you qualified? Well, I don't know. I got most of it, but there's a lot of parts I don't know. And I said, well, that's okay. That's what makes the job fun because you got to have some growth opportunity in order to make the job worthwhile. Otherwise, we'd probably be just bored. And I remember telling my supervisor at the time at DES, when she was worried about me. She goes, Lola, what's going on? I said, I gotta be honest. I feel like that little hamster in the cage was just going around and around and around that wheel because the job is starting to become repetitive and there's no new opportunities for growth. And I seem to already know this, this job inside out. I kind of feel like I'm just going through the motions. And when you get to that place, I think you start to lose value in adding to the environment. You're starting to now become, maybe the person that's negative or the person that's not happy or the person that's starting to feel underappreciated. So, yeah. So, first things first, I would say, and you can move to the next slide. I would say here are some things that you should consider if you want to start exploring your options. Now, in state government, something that I learned about early on, which I will recommend to anybody, is doing what we call an informational interview. Now, there's a certain caveat that you need to understand with doing an informational interview is that if you do an informational interview with the hiring manager, one thing needs to be certain. You do not do that while the job that you are interested in is open. You can't do that because the hiring manager is going to say, that's a conflict of interest. I don't want any hint of favoritism, special treatment, any of those things. So a hiring manager ain't going to touch you with a 20-foot pole. However, if you know already in advance that, God, I'd love to work at the Department of Commerce, and I would love to work with Kendrick Stewart, and he's a terrific guy. I love his philosophy. I love what they're doing over there. I would just love to be a part of it. Okay, you don't know if there's a job opening right now, and maybe you looked and there isn't any. And so this may be the perfect time to reach out to Kendrick and say, hey, I would love an opportunity to get to know you. I would love an opportunity to get to know the agency. I would love to hear about some of the things that might be coming down the pike. Would you give me just the 30-minute meet and greet kind of session where we could talk? And a lot of hiring managers, if they don't have a job open, they will do that. They don't have a problem with it. In fact, they kind of think that it's really nice that you're taking initiative and they're showing interest in their particular department. And if you know them well, and maybe you even speak to that when you first, tried to set this up, that helps. I know when I met Dr. Karen Johnson for the first time, one, I was intimidated as heck to meet her, but when I did meet her and when I set it up, I said, Dr. Johnson, or Dr. J as she's called, I know all about you. It's like, I know about what you've done and I respect your work. And I would just love to get to know you. And I would love to know more about some of the things that you feel are important to invest my time into. And maybe you might even know some things coming down, the horizon. And that's what I did. And so she said, I don't know if I do know you, but I'd be happy to get to know you. And so we did set up coffee and we talked. And there was no job openings. And I knew she worked at DOC. And I did express, where I was at. And then later she said, Lolo, there is some things coming down. It's not going to be right away. It might be 6 months to a year, but I'm glad that we met and talked because I think you're the kind of person that could work out in the future. Of course, you're going to have to apply and interview great and all those things, but at least let you know about it. And I said, okay, well, that's terrific. So for me, that was a successful informational interview. There wasn't any jobs. There was no conflict of interest. I established a relationship. I built trust. I expressed my passion, my interest, and hopefully, and she'd probably agree with me that I made a lasting impression. And so that's how you do it. Because I still really believe that there's probably a ton of the same type of person with the same type of qualifications, maybe even the same type of education that you have. So what's going to distinguish you from the 10 other people that have an accounting degree, Abby, right? I mean, what's going to make you different? Well, it may be that you took the initiative to get to know a very influential person in the industry that you work in, and that you got to establish someone that may know the upcoming trends and innovations, and maybe there's some certain programs that are important to you that this person would know. So I'm just saying this is a great way to kind of get your homework started. And so if you're lucky to know what you want, and if you're lucky to explore where you might want to work, some of us may like the same agency, so maybe it's just going to a, oh, that's my mom. I gotta tell her to call me back. Okay. You know, Mexican moms, they're gonna call. It doesn't matter if I'm working. Okay. Um, so let me get my thoughts back together. Okay. I'm just saying that that's a great way to kick it off. But you know, you're definitely gonna have to do some soul searching. You're gonna have to figure out, is there an agency that you would love to work for? And if it's at your current location, at your current place, then you may have to think about where in the different departments could I go to? Because as Dr. Johnson put it to me, she said, Lolo, I love what you're trying to do, but it may take 2 or 3 jobs to get to where you want to really be. And she was totally right about that. Because the job I have now is not the one I started with when I did move on after that meeting. Okay, so that's enough about informational interviews, but hopefully people get the point that that is a real great opportunity to establish a good relationship with somebody, especially if you want to work with them, or you want to work in the department, or even if you want to just work at that agency, and that could be somebody that you know on the inside, because those are the advantages that we need. Okay, so that segues into the second thing, which is use your network. Um, if you work for the state and you want to continue to work for the state, then one of the things you may want to do is make a list. It's like, okay, who do I know that could help me? You know, what kind of referrals could I get? It could be also just letting people know. I know when I was at DES, I was fortunate. My manager was supportive. I mean, she had told me right up front that she thought, you know, I was overqualified. So later when I did say, hey, you know what, I think it's time to start looking, she said, I'll help you. I'll help you. You know, I'll even point out opportunities for you. And so that was something that was maybe special for us. But there may be people that you've worked with for a while that know that it's time for you to probably look into something different, and they may actually support you. So I would make a list of referrals of friends, family, coworkers, colleagues, and then let them know that you're kind of on the hush hush with this, because some of us have to, um, as you look for state jobs. Because sometimes when you do get out and people know you're looking for a job, that can be counterproductive too. And pretty soon they don't see you as a legitimate member of the team because they know you want to leave. So just be really careful about that. Uh, I had a little bit of that happen with me too. So I can tell you that that's not always a good thing. You got to be kind of careful. Um, so be selective of who you share your resume with. And for heaven's sakes, don't put your resume on a job board, because that means all the recruiters know that you're looking for a job, because that's something we already look at all the time. And so, yeah, oh, you know, someone's looking for a job, I see a resume. So you may not want to have that kind of public awareness within the agency. Um, so here's the last thing, and it's one of the best things that I love, because I could talk all day about LinkedIn, is LinkedIn is a great tool for anyone that wants to explore their options. Now, I'm saying all this before the resume stuff because this stuff's important. But when you get on LinkedIn, and let's just say you want to start exploring a different type of job, um, and let me explain what that means. So I interviewed for the manager of recruitment at the Department of Revenue, and I made it to the finals. And I thought I did a pretty good job, but I didn't get it. I got runner up. Okay, so, but the manager called me in and she said, you know, I'd really like to talk to you and give you some feedback. I said, wow, I mean, you don't get a manager that calls you and said that they would give you feedback. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I went over and said, okay, yeah, so tell me what I did wrong. And she said, well, you know, you did really good. It's just that, you know, we wanted some more specific things. But here's the reason why I asked you to come to this meeting. She goes, Lola, it was so obvious to me that you wanted to do more than just recruiting. You spoke about experiences that lit you up and you really got into it. And I just thought I would share that maybe recruitment isn't what you should do specifically, that maybe it needs to be a little different. And you talked about your nonprofit experience, you talked about your upbringing and some of the situations that you had to deal with. And so when I walked away from there, that's when I was reading up on DEI work. And I thought, you know what, that's it. I need something that combines not only recruitment, but some of my personal experiences that would allow me to have a certain lens to the work that I want to do. And so I'm so grateful to the Department of Revenue because had I not had that meeting, I may not have had that perspective. And so what I started doing is I went on LinkedIn and I decided that I was going to get associated with anybody that I could that was delving into the DEI work. And so it's a really easy thing to do. All you do is you put, like in my instance, it was a DEI. I put it in the search bar up on top. And what you'll find is everybody will pop up that has DEI in their title or DEI in their work. And I just started connecting. And I would do a little intro because they give you an opportunity to do a little intro if you want to. And I just said, I've decided to get into this work. I would love to have your support. I consider you to be a subject matter expert. You'd be happy to connect, something like that. Okay, so then I started getting connected. It was just all the time. I must have had 50 to 100. I know when I met with Steve, I said, do you have a LinkedIn account? And he goes, yeah. And I go, okay, well, what your goal is to get to 5,000 on your network as quickly as possible. Because you're only as good as your network when you're a recruiter. Okay, so as soon as I established my group of people that know DI work, now I have my subject matter experts for anything that I wanted to look into. And so consider that you want to explore a job. So there was a time, and this was when I first attempted state employment after being a corporate recruiter. I wanted this job with DSHS. Western State Hospital had just had a couple of incidents where people had escaped. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but it was a big deal at the time. And the governor had gotten funding from the legislature. And so they put this, what they call a special hiring project together. And they only wanted to hire 2 recruiters. And so I wanted to apply, but I didn't know anything about that kind of institutional recruitment. So I wanted to do my homework. So the first thing I did is I went to LinkedIn, I put state mental hospital recruitment, and I started connecting. And then I told everybody that I was preparing for an interview and that I would love to get their best tips and insights and what would make me competitive on the interview if I got it. Okay, so what happened is I got one lady that said, I will help you. I will even schedule a call with you. And if you like, we can even do it in the next 2 hours. And I said, yeah, I remember I pulled over. I was like in a highway and I sat like some parking lot for like an hour and a half with my pen and my notepad. And I was writing down all these things that she mentioned. And she said, you know, if you're going to really nail this interview, you got to do this and this and that. And you're going to come up with a matrix of all these different things that you can do as offer solutions. And I said, man, I'm going to do it. So I did all these things. I put it together. I got the interview. But when it got to the point where they said, hey, could you offer some suggestions of things you could bring to the table? Well, I had come in with what was like 5-page, it wasn't a report. It was kind of like a overview matrix. And I had it divided up where I would list all the channels and things I would do and then the solutions. But it all came from this lady that worked at Oregon State Hospital. And when they saw the present or the overview that I gave them, they just said, okay, you're hired. I go, really? Yeah, anybody that's put that much investment into the work and coming in with the plan, we're going to hire you. So, and it gets better. It gets really better. Hopefully there's no DSHS people here. But when I started the job, I talked to one of the other recruiters and they said, God, we're really excited about having you join our team. I said, oh, me too. I'm so excited. Well, God, we are going to follow this plan that we've been given by you. And so we've all been given a copy and we're all going to work with this. I said, really? Oh, wow. That's really cool. So I came in like I was the expert. Everybody had my plan, and this all came from LinkedIn. So I'm just telling you, it's a great tool if you use it the right way. So if you want to do your homework on any particular job, why not go to the subject matter experts that are doing the job? And why don't you ask them, what would make me a competitive and marketable candidate? And you will get some people, I mean, especially if you reach out to a ton of people, just the rule of numbers, right? You will get some people that are gonna say, I would be happy to help you, especially if you're very sincere and respectful about it, which I was. And you will get a lot of help. And so that's my little tip for LinkedIn. So if you don't have a LinkedIn account and you want a job, my suggestion is go set up an account. Okay, you can change the slide now. Okay, so in other words, if you're going to start looking toward a job, you're going to have to do some homework. In state government, one is definitely LinkedIn, but here's the second one. So change the slide. Okay, so this is what we call position description. Some people know about it and some people don't have a clue. Okay, so when you look at a job that you want in state government and you see it on careers.wad.gov, one thing that you will know is that there's a recruiter that's assigned to this particular job, and Steve knows this. And so at the very bottom of the announcement, you will see a name and a number. Sometimes to be safe, they don't list any names anymore. They just give you the phone number or email address. But just so you know, because we have rights to public information, you can request a copy of the position description of the job you want. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but I've done it on every single job that I've applied to. So the first thing I do is like, can I get a copy of the position description? And the reason why I'm telling you this is because it's a great tool to start crafting your resume, your cover letter, and even your LinkedIn profile. Because what you'll discover is a lot of information. So I'll go ahead and click to the next one. So the first thing, and I get this question a lot when I was a recruiter, is like, well, can you tell me the name of the hiring manager so that I can address the cover letter to the right person instead of to whom it may concern? Okay, so that's the first thing you'll get. You'll know who you're dealing with. It'll list the name of the person who's the supervisor, and so you'll be able to address the person for the job. That's a small thing, but in some ways it's if you were a hiring manager and someone knew your name, it's kind of a big deal that they did their due diligence. They found out, they did their homework, and they got that letter addressed correctly. So that's one thing. But one of the other things that you'll notice right away is that you'll see a position objective. So you're going to get in a very succinct way of what the job's all about. And this is really important because as recruiters, when we put a posting together, we're not going to put everything that's in the position description on a posting. What we're going to do is we're going to extract what's the most important so that we can give people kind of like the essence of the job. And so you'll get that from the position description. It's a really kind of tightly written description of the job. So that's another thing. But here's the big thing is once you scroll down on a position description, you will quickly find out what the duties are of the job. And what's really important about this is that normally they will break it down according to percentages. So if you see 40% of this job is doing, this, and this, and this, well, if I'm preparing for an interview, I already know that 40% of my preparation has to be on this particular duty, because this is a big part of what this job's all about. And so if I had to do my homework and really wanted to brush up on what I need to know about this job, I'm going to look at the highest percentage things first, and then I'm going to break it down to the lower percentages. So if you see something that says 10%, Well, I'm not going to spend all of my time looking into 10%. You know, they're be surprised if you even get one question that's going to apply to that particular duty. But for sure, you're going to get the 40. And I'm telling you, every time I've done this, where I've like prepared my interview prep and everything according to my position description, I'm usually right on the money. It's like, you know what, there's going to be at least two or three questions on this section. There's going to be at least 2 or 3 questions on this section. And if you break it down that way, when you get to the actual interview, you won't be surprised at all. They say, well, of course I'm going to bring that up. That's a big part of the job. But if you don't have the position description, you wouldn't have any idea. So it's a real advantage for somebody to have that in your hands, as opposed to somebody who's just trying to guess what to do. So hopefully that makes sense. The next thing is the working conditions. You know, right now, of course, we're all teleworking mostly. Maybe some of us are not, but you get a good idea of what's expected. You know, there's travel, or you know, maybe there's a certain expectation of the way you worked with customers. So that's another thing you'll get. And then the other thing that's really important is the requirements. Now, I know Abby had mentioned to me that people wanted to know, how do I get into the referred list? And, you know, how do I get considered? Well, I'll tell you one thing, just to save yourself a lot of time, when you get to the requirements of a position description, that is what the recruiter is looking for. And if you do not have all the things listed on the requirements, they're going to find a way to ask a question in the area they're called supplemental questions, and they will knock you out. In other words, yes, no. Do you have a degree? I'm looking for a degree. You say no. Okay, you know what? You're off the list. You're not even considered anymore. Do you have a certain certification? Maybe you need a PMP, you know, some kind of a project management certification. That's required. You don't have it, there's a yes, no question that's going to be asked. And if you say no, you're out. Okay, sometimes they want to know that you know certain subject matter area or experience, and so then they'll ask you to expand on it. You say you're really good at HR. Can you speak to the experiences that you've had at certain jobs that speak to HR and recruitment? So then you have an opportunity to expand on that. Of course, we're going to look at your resume too, just to make sure that those two are in sync. Because some people will say all kinds of stuff on the supplemental question, but then you're like looking for it on the resume and it's like, I don't see that here. It's like, I don't know what they're talking about. So in other words, just make sure that you really review the requirements on a position description, because that is the bottom line. Now, when you see a part that says desired requirements or desired qualifications, well, those aren't going to be the ones that will knock you out. In fact, those are the ones that are going to give you the points. Those are the ones that are going to give you kind of the edge. So if they say, we would love if you had a PMP certification, and let's say you do, and you say yes, well, then most likely, if it's scored, you're going to get additional points. So the first thing I did every time I would look to even applying to a job, well, let me just see if I would even make it. So I would look at the supplemental questions, look at the requirements, and just, you can tell really quickly what the recruiter is trying to do. They're asking if you make the requirements, because that's the first responsibility of the recruiter, is to give a hiring manager a referred list of candidates that meet minimum qualifications. And they depend on us to do that well for them. And so if you don't have it, then you're not going to be referred. So you got to make it through the first step. And if you don't have it when you're first exploring the job, if I was you, I wouldn't even apply, because it's not going to matter. You're going to get screened out. But if it's a desired, yeah, then go for it. You can go ahead and justify everything else, because it's not going to be your bottom line. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I may have already let the cat out of the bag on this one, but you know, I'll revisit some of it. I love LinkedIn, because basically when you think about LinkedIn, what you're really talking about is a passive market. So there's two types of markets. There's an active market and there's a passive market. Passive are people who are employed. Active active candidates are people that are in between jobs or looking for a job, and they don't have one. And so we've gone through a few things lately, right, where there was a lot of people that lost jobs, maybe because they got sick and so they had to leave their job and then, recover and so forth. I know at DOC, we lost a ton of correctional officers. And so we were like in dire straits of getting what we needed. Okay, so LinkedIn is really a great place for an employer to look for a passive candidate, someone who's employed. So that's another reason why LinkedIn is important, especially if you're working in a job, because who wants to look for a job, when they're not employed? That's really tough. It gets really intense, but it's a lot easier when you're already working. Make sure your profile is up to date. And here's a thing that's kind of a big deal. Make sure it's consistent with your resume. Some people will say, I have 10 years experience doing this, and then the resume only says they have 5. It's like, well, what's going on here? It's like, this is really inconsistent. And so you don't want to, raise any flags, and, you definitely don't want the appearance of being, you know, not truthful and maybe over exaggerating your skill sets, but I would just make sure that everything is very consistent with what you're showing the employer with an application, your resume, and your LinkedIn profile, because we will look at the LinkedIn profile and we will notice right away there's discrepancies and it doesn't look right. So that's another thing. LinkedIn's a great place for referrals. I know if you put the option on your profile that you would be open to jobs, they will let you know about jobs and recruiters will know and no one else knows. So it's very discreet. So you can do that. And what will happen is every morning recruiters get up and they will look for people, especially in the corporate market out there. And they will approach you. So if you have that option on, you will get referrals. Um, the last bullet is pretty much what I've already mentioned. But let me just get a little more in depth about it. When you're going to put your resume together, especially if you're going to break into maybe a little different area like what I did, I'm a recruiter, but I wanted to get more into DI work and I wanted the two to be infused. I wanted them to be together. But my expertise in DI is still, I'm still learning that, at least at that time I was. And so I needed to know the language. I needed to know the trends. I needed to know the key terms that they're using. I wanted to know if there was any innovations, right? I mean, there's certain platforms that are being used. Right now, people are using blind resumes where you don't even see their names. You don't see any information that would allow someone to have bias to review your application or resume. Okay, so you'll find that out if you have your subject matter expert support group is one, because here's the other benefit. Once you've connected all these people, guess what they're posting on LinkedIn? They're posting all the resources all the time. They're either giving you downloads or they're letting you know about something they've discovered. So it's really easy to put a resume together that gets you into more of the current language. And as a recruiter, I'm going to do Control F and I'm going to look for one word specifically, like let's say I am looking for a PMP or something specific. I'm going to do that. I don't know if I'm going to read the resume. I may read some of it, but I'm going to look for those keywords because that's what the hiring manager wants. And so if you're not in tune with what's going on within your industry and you don't have certain keywords in your resume and your application, or even wouldn't it be nice to articulate in your interview the certain words that everybody's using? Then they kind of feel like, well, this person is really well versed. So it's a really great tip to pick up on those keywords, language, knowledge, trends, innovations, and also just even maybe historical perspective. I know at one time I applied for the manager of it was considering business applications for the master contract. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I wanted to work with getting more businesses that were minority based into being considered a master contract so that all state agencies could use them as a vendor. And that was the job I wanted. Did I know a lot about it? No, I had no idea. So I reached out And lucky for me, I found a guy that was writing his PhD on the topic. He was, I had to stop him because he wanted to talk for 3 hours about his dissertation. And although I appreciated all the historical information that I got, I was like, okay, I got to take a break. I don't want to talk more about this anymore. But I will tell you that when I came on the interview, which, you know, it was 85 that applied, I made it down to the 4. And I have no prior experience at all with this. And so I was so lucky I even got to the 4. But I was able to cite off all these court cases and all these different things, and they just looked and go, how do you know all these things? Well, because this PhD student was like bringing me up to speed. So that's just another reason for getting on LinkedIn. Okay, I'll get off that wagon. Okay, go ahead. So once your homework is done, now it's time to craft the resume. And how am I doing on time? Am I going over? Okay, I'll try to hurry a little bit. So one of the first things I would just say if you're going to do your resume is it might be a good time to reevaluate. You know, you got to get really clear, and I've already talked about it all through this, but you got to get really clear about what you're passionate about, you know, and what are your strengths? What can offer you the advantage for a job? And so that might have to give you might have to do some work on that. I know I had to, but you may have to make a list of things that you feel are your strengths, your best abilities and skills, and then also what drives you. I mean, what's going to motivate you to jump out of bed and go to work? So these are really good things that you should know. I would say before you even touch the paper, before you even type, like just have that information handy so that you're kind of aware of yourself. Because I mean, it's different stages of our life. I think we have these certain pivot moments where we've decided that, you know what, I don't know this is my thing anymore. I think I want to go into something different. And I think I've been told that I'm really good at this. I'm going to start looking into it. Okay, so there you are. Now you're at your computer and you want to start drafting out a different type of resume, but it's got a different lens. And so this is a really good time to do that. You can change the slide. Okay, so here's state government. I'm gonna just be honest. For me, anyway, I didn't care about fancy. I didn't care about modern. I didn't care about the glitzy looking resume. I didn't. I seen purple. I seen pink. I seen all kinds of interesting resumes. Um, Now, of course, it's all online, but I'm just telling you, sometimes that doesn't matter in state government because really what we're looking for is do you have the skills, the abilities, and the knowledge that we need? And like I mentioned, we're trying to see if you meet minimum qualifications. That is our primary concern. And so a resume that is clear and concise and straightforward allows me to do my job. Because even though you may have said on your supplemental question that you do have these certain skills and these certain experiences, I got to go make sure that your resume supports that. And so I'm going to go through it and I'm going to go look and see if there was anything mentioned about your work in DI, you know, or your work in a particular certification or any particular thing. So it just needs to be really clear. Um, I already mentioned this before, but acquiring the language is important and knowing keywords. And one of the best things that you can do in your resume, because I'll be honest, the top part of your resume is almost the most important part of your resume, is making sure that you have your contact information, which now includes your LinkedIn address, which now includes your email. And don't make a funky looking email, you know, because even though you may get past me, the hiring manager is going to look at your email, and if it says something really strange, and I know this group probably isn't going to do that, but I've seen some funky looking titled resume, email addresses that I thought, okay, this isn't good. So go get a professional email address, get a Gmail account or something, so that you stay professional. Okay, go ahead and click. So the top portion is what they call branding profile. And what you do is you summarize basically who you are, who you help, and how you help them. It's really important because I think you want to give people a really quick snapshot of what you're about. And this may not necessarily be for me as the recruiter, but the hiring manager wants to get kind of like a sense of who you are. And this is a good way to be very clear in a very short way. I wouldn't put a lot here, but definitely outline what you're about and what you care about, what you do, and how you help people, and even maybe a little personality. I know on mine, I say I'm a public servant, I care about people, and I believe in kindness. Those are things that are important to me. I want people to know that. And so some people would say, I really liked your profile. You had a really nice. It spoke to me. So that top portion of the resume, when it comes down to, and there's different ways of titling this. This particular person said executive profile, but I've seen different descriptions where it could be like a branding statement, or it could be like an objective summary. The thing you don't want to have is, which is an old relic of before when I was like in high school, is the objective statement. Get away from the objective statement. That's an old thing. Don't use it. That's usually one sentence. I'm here to obtain the most desirable position to employ my skills. I don't know. It's something really silly. I used to have that phrase in my resumes when I first started looking for a job, but it's far more in depth now. You really need to give people kind of a depiction of who you are, who you serve, and what you're about. Okay, go ahead. Next slide. So when you get to the section of employment, one thing that I would say is give an introduction to the employer. Let people know that what your role was within the job and how that has any kind of significance to the company or the organization or the state agency. I think that's important because some people just get right to the bullet points, and I think you're missing half the story. If you can, like when I described Washington State Hospital, I said I was one of two recruiters selected in a very high alert situation where people had escaped. The governor had drawn funds. This was a high level position. We succeeded, and I went into it. And so when you read it, you knew right away of the situation. Now my bullet points went into saying that I recruited so many. I increased the percentage of nursing. As a result, we were able to, create the safe and security that the public needed. Those are the bullet points. So your bullet points shouldn't be more than, I would say, 5 or 6. Don't go 10. I've seen resumes where you just got all bullet points. That's just too much. You got to have some narrative. You got to have maybe 5 bullet points, and the bullet points are good for acknowledging significant results. So if you did something significant that created some kind of change or some kind of result, even if it's percentage, you could do that. If it's dollars, you could do that. I'm imagining Abby's probably got more of that kind of a resume. If you want to list out numbers, anything concrete that tells your story in a way that's easy for someone to understand is the best way to make that point. But don't go crazy on the bullet points. Okay, so I'm going to go into the interview. It's just a quick overview because I know my time's limited anyhow, but go ahead and click to the next slide. Okay, so you've already done your homework. You've done a lot of stuff with LinkedIn. You already know the position description. So in some ways, you're kind of pretty equipped. But one thing you definitely want to know, and this is just standard, right? Is know your agency, know your organization, know the goals, know the mission statement. Why are they hiring for the job? If you can get that information from an informational interview, maybe you learned about that before. Maybe you learned it from the position description. Maybe you learned it from talking to somebody on LinkedIn. But those are just really good things to know because it's going to allow you to tailor your responses in a way that makes sense. And people will know that you did your homework. And my wife, who's also a recruiter, would tell you that she's always impressed with someone that has that kind of work ethic. Again, study the position description. That's going to give you everything you need. Oh, hey, my slides changed. Okay. The position description is going to be the best tool to help you with preparing for a interview. Like I said, if you look at the duties and you look at the breakdown, you'll know the kind of investment you need to make sure that you can do those certain duties of the job. So that's really important. And I would structure all my interview questions. So what I do is I write out a bunch of questions and I answer them. So first I write all my questions based on my position description, and then I start answering them, and then I start rehearsing them. So then when I get to the interview, it's like second nature. I already know it. I practice it. I know it's 40% of the job. It's a good chance they're going to ask for it. And I got to be honest, there's even been times when I smile because I'm like, yeah, I knew you were going to ask that question. I'm ready for it. And so, just execute. And in fact, my last interview for this job that I had, it was the shortest interview I've ever had. I think I did the interview in 20 minutes. And I told my wife, I don't know. I think I was too succinct with my responses. I'm not sure if I gave them enough. But then later I talked to a panel member and he goes, you were so right on the money. Because your answers were right on cue. It's like you almost knew exactly what we were thinking. And I said, well, that's because I did my homework. That's what I did. Okay, so there you go. The position description is something. Hold on, I got to pull my call there. Um, get knowledgeable through LinkedIn, which I've already talked about. Do your informational interviews. Uh, one thing that you want to do too, just because sometimes we forget what we did. I know, when you look at your resume, you get to go down memory lane and you kind of remember, oh yeah, God, I used to be really great. Um, go through it. Make a note of things that will add to the value of the job that you're interviewing for. And make sure that you have that stuff ready to talk about. Uh, get those examples, because I know if I ask a question, like if I ask, Tony, hey, can you tell me about a particular time that you did this, and can you break it down for me? Not only do I want to know what the problem was and how you solved it, but I want to know all the steps that you took, and can you give me an example of it? Because that way I really know if he knows what he's talking about. So in order for me to do that, in order for Tony to do that, he's going to have to go back to a job that he did it. He's going to have the example already ready to go. And he's going to have to remember the situation so that he's ready to give that real comprehensive answer. And that will be exactly what they want. And you don't want to hesitate on that. You want to be able to be ready. So I'm just saying, review your resume, review your accomplishments, remind yourself of things that you did, and then write out the steps that you took to get those certain answers and those certain solutions. And then, of course, at the end, make sure you have a couple of questions. I wouldn't go more than 2. I think people belabor this a little too much. Like they'll do 3 or 4 questions, and it's like, as an interview panelist that I've done a million times, when they go into 3 and 4 questions, I'm going, okay, this is overkill. They're just going too much. So just do 2, 2 questions, but make sure that they're well thought out, they're appropriate, and they give somebody reason to think, wow, this person really thought about this job. One of my favorite questions that I ask is I always say, if you hired this person for this job that you're interviewing for, let's say a year's gone by, and you were evaluating the success of the person you hired. And he's like, I'm so glad that we hired this person. Can you give me 2 things that this person did that you felt so good about that they accomplished? And I get that look like, wow, okay, well, what the heck? It's like, but it will tell you right away where the priorities are for the first 90 days. You'll have to do some of that work immediately. And here's something I didn't put in my presentation, but the last 3 interviews that I've done, I have submitted a 30, 60, and 90-day plan at the interview. So I just told them right up front, this is what I'm doing for the first 30 days, the 60 days, and 90 days. This is what I'm doing. And I have it color coded. It looks fancy. It's all spelled out. And it tells people that you put some homework and some real hard effort into this job and that you really want it. I mean, if anything else, it just demonstrates that you really want it, even if they don't look at it. They know you want the job. And I've done that for the last 3 interviews. And I got 2 out of the 3 on the jobs. One, I don't know, they didn't like it, I guess. Who knows? Maybe I more competitive person. Okay, last slide. Okay, so you got this. And I'm open for questions, which is the part I'm really looking forward to. So if there's anybody that wants to ask me something, I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I know that while we get people to type them in, we did get questions submitted for you. And I know that we won't have time to get to all of them, but at least we can start with some of them. So let's see. How do I present work experience comparable to a degree or an educational requirement?
It's a good question. Well, the first thing you got to make sure that you do is you got to look at the requirements, and you have to see if there's that clause in there. So in other words, some people will say degree or substitution of experience. You got to see that. If it doesn't have it listed out, it only asks for degree and it doesn't say anything more about it, it doesn't matter. They want the degree.
Okay. Let's see. Someone in the chat posted, I like the idea of submitting a 30, 60, 90-day plan, but it often doesn't feel applicable for entry-level jobs. Is that the type of application material you'd include starting at a certain position level, or could it be used for any position application?
That's a good question. I don't know if it necessarily has the same value in a entry-level position, but I can imagine that it would still be impressive to do. Because the first 30 days, if you really think about it, it's about absorbing the information, of the organization, knowing the mission statement, looking at the org chart. It's getting familiar with the staff. So, I mean, everybody's got to do that. And in 60 days, you're starting to establish meetings to get kind of an understanding of certain work that you'll be involved in. And then, 90 days, you're starting to become a contributor. You've now obtained the right connections, you've learned about things, and now you have an opinion, and you're starting to offer some suggestions and contributions to whatever the job is. So if you can package that in a job that you feel you want to do, then why not? There's still a lot of things that are going to be universal there. So yeah, sure. You can say, well, maybe I'm not manager yet, but I'm going to be. Because in some ways, that's kind of what you're doing. You're already outlining some things.
Hope that answers your question. Here's another one. What are your thoughts on LinkedIn courses as reinforcement of requirements as laid out in the position description?
You're talking about the stuff that used to be former lynda.com?
Yes.
Yeah, I was on Lynda all the time. She was my best friend. I put a lot of stuff in my resume, stuff that I wanted to shore up as a weakness. So I figured, maybe I can't get certified in the PMP, but I can definitely take a bunch of courses to say that I'm familiar with the subject matter and get, so yeah, I think I'm definitely a proponent of it and listing those out on your resume because they know that you're willing to explore those. I did a bunch of that in diversity. So I didn't have the, I couldn't get anyone to pay for the CDE, right? The Certificate of Diversity Executive. And so I had to do all the DEI courses on Lynda. And I must have had like 5 or 6 of them listed out on my resume. So they knew I was serious about it. So yeah, I think it's a good thing.
Let's see. So the next question is, I've attended job interviews where I presented a business plan that wasn't even required. I didn't get the job, but they did implement my plan. How can you manage to be able to have initiative and protect yourself from that?
Oh God, I know that's tough. One time I applied to a job as a manager of recruitment for a company that did first aid kits. And I brought in this huge packet of stuff that I did, and they kept it. They never gave it back to me. And I always worry that they're using my program. They're using all my stuff. And I just thought, well, I can't do that again. So I guess if you do an in-person interview, take it back with you. That was one way. The other way is to go ahead and use the footer and footnote that it's from you. It's not going to protect you completely because you never know if they're just going to extract your ideas and put them into play. I guess that's part of the risk that we take. But yeah, I've been there and I know what that means. And one time I interviewed for, I don't know if I can share that, but yeah, I worked for, I interviewed for a community health organization that's Hispanic based. And I said, the organization this size, you really should implement certain things, within your recruitment system. And well, I happen to have a friend that's on the board, and he said, yeah, you didn't get the job, but that particular guy that you interviewed with, he shared it with the board of things that we should be implementing for the system. And I said, oh, well, that's nice. So people do take your ideas, unfortunately.
Yeah. Let's see. So is bragging recommended, or what's your take on that?
Bragging
And-
when?
Well, the follow-up to that is, how do you articulate your skills without sounding too cocky? Do the panelists prefer overly confident, or can that come across as negative?
I think it's on the delivery. I interviewed a lady not too long ago, and I knew she had the skills, but she almost came off as arrogant, and it just because of the way she delivered it. I think she could have done it in a different style, a little more genuine, a little more humble. A little, it's okay to present your skill levels and have confidence, but yeah, there is a fine line when you go over and you act like you're all that. So I would say just be really careful on the delivery, practice that, and make sure it comes across as someone who's genuine. And here's the word, that I often find people using, which is very useful, is be authentic. Be yourself. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Be yourself. Put it in your own context. Use your own examples. I'm a small town kid from the Yakima Valley. I'm not gonna say I'm from Bellevue. I'm not gonna say I know anything about that. I grew up in the sticks, so I come across that way sometimes.
Okay. Outside of a higher degree, for example, a master's, what do you recommend on how to grow one's talent to move into a different position within the state, not within one's current field of work?
Say that one more time.
Outside of a higher degree, such as a master's, what do you recommend on how to grow one's talent to move into a different position that is not within one's current field of work? Which I think you touched on, connecting with those subject matter experts on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and that's a part of it. The other part is looking for opportunities to even volunteer on a project, to take initiative on something they're doing. If you can put that on your resume, that looks wonderful. Even if you're a part of a committee or you get involved. Because one of the things that I was fortunate with DES is they allowed me to get involved in things that I cared about. And I knew that if I was going to move on from my job there, that I was going to have to get connected to a bunch of different areas of work. So I got in DI. So I was on the DI Council. I got on the Talent Management Council. And then I got on the Latino Leadership Network. And so as a result of those three things, I was able to get really connected. I was able to get connected to a lot of good work. And I got involved in the DI Council, and I was able to get on a couple of committee work. So yeah, you're going to have to take initiative and volunteer in certain areas if you don't have the degree. A lot of people would love to grow their own as opposed to going external and finding a candidate that's outside the agency. It'd be so nice if we could find somebody internally that's willing to do the job and grow into the position, and then they look really great when they do the interviews because they know the job. That's why internships are really important. That's why mentor programs are really important. But even volunteering on a committee on a particular department that maybe you don't have a degree for, sometimes when people see talent, they create opportunities for you. They will craft something knowing, and it's for you because they want you to succeed.
Yeah, that's why I'm such a huge proponent of joining a business resource group, because you may not be able to get that opportunity within your own agency or within your own department or division, but you can certainly do that and explore other options within one of the business resource groups.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Here's another question. One of the challenges we see with veterans transitioning from the military to state service is the challenge to transfer their former military occupation and skills to state positions. What advice would you have for veterans looking for state jobs?
That's a good question. I know that when I would go to the Berg events, we often had an open forum where we talked about that. It's this whole art of translating what you did in military service and putting it into terms that make sense to state employers. That's really kind of like the work that you have to really figure out. Because like the guy that I'm an advisor to now, I have a intern that comes from the Work X program. He's a captain right now in the Army, and bright. I mean, he's as sharp as a tack. Um, and the things he's done are very, logistical, this and that. I said, okay, well, let's not use that word. Let's use another way of saying it. And so I'm helping him with those kind of translations. So that's the work of someone that's coming from the military to civilian life, is learning how to translate what you did and put it into terms that state government would understand. And that's and I think there's a lot of people willing to help veterans that way. And so I don't think there's a lack of resources in that area. I think it's just somebody that needs to understand, how do I translate what I did and put it in something that people would be attracted to.
Yeah, and thank you, Jamie, for providing a link. It looks like there's a link in the chat of military to civilian occupation translator. So thank you. And then we'll go into one more question, and then that will be time. For any of you guys that have questions, please either continue to put them in the chat, or I will have one of my team members put our LLN email address in the chat. Send them, and I can maybe gather them for Lolo, and if he has time, if he could answer them, we can get them back out. Last question. How do you make the jump into a leadership role when you haven't been a supervisor or a manager previously?
Well, I mean, you could do it through kind of testing the waters in some ways. You could do it through volunteer work. You can be a chair of a committee. You can take on certain leadership responsibilities. In other words, you can work your way into the role. That way it doesn't come off as a culture shock to you. Yeah, even now I was a business owner for 13 years. And so I had a bunch of people that I used to manage in my own office. But then when I went into state government, I didn't have the opportunity to be a leader again. So it took a little while to learn how to be somebody that would follow the manager when I used to be the business owner. Now I'm a manager again. And I got to tell you, it's like I almost forgot what it was like. So you just got to get back into those types of activities, because it's more about your confidence. It's more about constructing recommendations, and also just, I mean, I guess if I had to really approach it, like ask yourself, well, what would that require? What is it that I would need to do if I wanted to be a manager or a leader of some kind? I mean, what exactly does that require? Well, does that mean you got to be a good public speaker? Okay, well then go join Toastmasters. Do you have to be a good writer? Well then, okay, then get on LinkedIn training and get really down onto making sure that you articulate clearly and that you write well. So, I mean, yeah, there's ways to do it. I would just say get yourself warmed up to the job and just so that it's a smooth transition. Then once you get the job, you're ready.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Lolo. That was such a great presentation. It's one that even myself, who has been in the state for 7 years now, still took things from it. I think I need to update my LinkedIn account. I'm not gonna lie. But again, thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming back and doing this for us.
Oh yeah, no, I'm super proud to be involved. I miss you guys. I know right now I'm involved in the Washington Immigrant Network, but my heart's still with the leadership network too. So plenty of love to go around.
Yes, thank you. All right, guys. Well, up next, we'll take just a couple minutes and then we'll go into breakout rooms where you guys will get to connect with other Latinos in state government. So stay tuned. If you need to stretch for a second, please do so. And we'll get started here in like another minute.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go, guys. I have another thing to do, but thank you so much for the opportunity. All right.
Thank you, Lolo. Bye. Up. Sorry. So next up, we are going to have committee report outs, and it'll be very quick. So I will throw it over to Indira with health and wellness.
Thank you, Abby. Hi, everyone. Okay, and the first thing that I want to highlight today is our wellness challenge. And we have our first leaderboard, the first leader of the June challenge. So we have Tony with the hikes, 11.19 miles. So good job, Tony. And Florida with 12 workout, in gym workout. And I got the walk with 5.94 miles. That's not too much, but that's something. And I heard some people in our room talking about doing hikes and mountain bikes. So others saying that your kids do bike ride, and we don't have anybody right now competing with bike rides. So log in those hours, those miles, everything that you do, because then you can beat up Tony or me, because it's not that difficult. Well, Tony is kind of difficult. 11 miles is a lot, but yeah. And the other thing that I wanted to point it out is that we had a schedule at Tolme, a visit to the Tolme Park, but it was right during the heat wave, and we have to cancel that activity. And we are thinking about when are we going to do it or reschedule, but maybe it's going to be later in the season. And the other focus of our work right now in the health and wellness is planning for the Hispanic Heritage Month. So we're going to do a couple of activities. One live event or in-person event, and another is going to be during lunch hours. But I will say more in the next meeting. So back to you, Abby.
Thank you, Indira. If you guys haven't joined the challenge, please do so. I am after hearing Indira, I was like, okay, I need to do something. It's nice out. I have no excuse anymore. I need to get out and get my 10,000 steps at least. All right. And next up, we've got Stephen Jovita with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Subcommittee.
I always forget to unmute myself and start talking. So I'm Jovita Ramirez with the DI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Subcommittee with LLN. And just to tell you a little bit about what we do. By the way, Steve over there, Cameron, I can never say your last name, is my co-chair. And we have about 6 members in our subcommittee. So it has really grown. It used to be just 2, 3 of us. So yay. But we do, this year we've been doing a lot of lunch and learns because of COVID pandemic. We did lunch and learns on boards and commissions, New Year celebrations. We also have networked and collaborated with other BRGs such as DIN, Disabilities Inclusion Network, and also we're working with RAIN, the Rainbow Alliance Inclusion Network, and we are working on developing resources, DI resources, and also developing ground rules for our DEI committee meetings. What else, Steve?
Just in case we have people here that you know, that enjoyed Lolo's presentation, as I'm sure all of us did, and we're thinking about jobs in the future and maybe skills we don't have right now. If you join a committee, I'm not telling you which one to join, but maybe I am. If you join a committee, you're going to gain skills that you don't have today. And in 6 months and a year from now, you can put something on your resume that you couldn't put today. And during that time, you'll get to meet cool people. You'll have a lot of fun, and you'll be helping the LLN in our mission to increase the number of representation of Latinos in the state and help people to advance in their careers also. So that's my pitch.
Thank you. So if you're interested in DEI, just send us an email or LLN an email, I guess. Any of us can help you get connected with a committee or any committee if you want to join. I think that's it.
All right. Do you mind putting in those emails in the chat for people that may have an interest?
Sure, I will do that.
Thank you. And let's see. So our communications team and our membership outreach team are out this week. They decided to take vacation. So we will move on to Tony with best practices if you have any updates.
Yeah, so the Best Practices Subcommittee is the group where we work on policy and building data and providing providing kind of identifying the areas of work that we can do to help create a more welcoming and inclusive environment for Latinos, find the data and provide resources to help with participation in BRGs and kind of ground the work that we're doing. So for example, we just published our report on the 2020 Professional Development and Inclusion Survey we ran back in December. I want to say thank you to Larry, Steve, and Jovita for helping with that effort. It was pretty big. And so if you're interested in that sort of work, and again, building work experience, we're going to be meeting next Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. Over Teams. So just either, again, send me an email as I'm currently organizing it. We meet once a month to talk about either the current project we're working on, identify areas where we could work, And so what we'll be focusing on this coming meeting is how to support the new statewide BRG participation policy. So that include the Office of Financial Management has put together policy first off, but also frequently asked questions. And what we're looking to do is kind of simplify it and give members or people interested in business resource groups kind of the highlights of, number one, it's okay to use state time, but also, how to get it approved through your supervisor and build support, because not everybody's aware of the business resource groups. And even if they are aware, there's that tension of, okay, I'm supposed to be doing my day job, but I also want to go, listen to a webinar from Lolo on how to advance my career, or I want to go help with this project. Is it okay? So those sorts of questions. We've reached out to the other business resource groups, so we hopefully will have some attendance from BUILD or which is the Blacks United in Leadership Development, or the Disability and Inclusion Network. So it'll be a larger effort. And so if you're looking at ways to show that you can write or do data analysis, all of that stuff, there's plenty of opportunity to help. And yeah, so hopefully we'll see you next Thursday.
Awesome, thank you. And that does it for our report outs. So last couple things, our next meeting is Tuesday, August 10th from 3 to 5 p.m. where we will be having our DEI subcommittee talk about mentorship programs, and we're going to have Larry Delgado come and talk to us a bit about this DEI training, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. I actually got to participate in the pilot training. So I'm excited for him to come and chat about what that looks like and, a little bit more about it. So as always, we would love your feedback. So please, please, please provide us your feedback. That is the only way that we are getting better at this. And you can reach us at lln@ofm.wa.gov. And we would love for you guys to connect with us. So you guys can sign up for our newsletter, which has a lot of awesome information and job opportunities. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. We record a lot of our webinars and our meetings and presentations, and they can be found on YouTube. And for any additional information, check out our website, which is currently housed under the Washington State Commission on Hispanic Affairs website. And with that, I don't have anything else. So I will give you guys your last 8 minutes of your workday. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here today. I have really appreciated each and every one of you. So hasta la próxima. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.